Welcome, listeners, to the long-awaited episode of East End History in an Object, where we identify a historical record in our collection that we want to give a shout-out. I'm Genova Messiah, Learning and Participation Officer at Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives, and I'm joined by Tony T, Research and Engagement Lead, the newest member of the team here at the Archives. This is the first episode to be focused around Communities and Liberation, a historical research and public art project which aims to increase awareness of the long history of the African presence in the borough of Tower Hamlets, dating back centuries before the West India docks were built in 1802. We are identifying local places, spaces and networks in which African people lived, worked or socialised during the period of the British transatlantic slave trade. This Communities of Liberation project is researching and reimagining the lives of free working class communities, hence the liberation. And we have records of these people living, working, socialising and building communities in the East End 300 years ago. So before we introduce Tony, a little bit about what we do. If you're not familiar with our service or organisation, we are a local history library and archive, and we collect, preserve and make accessible a range of original records, images and reference books that document the changing local landscape and lived experiences of individuals and communities in Tower Hamlets. Please read the show notes for more information. Tony is a creative producer and freelancer. He has worked in bringing heritage alive as co-founder of Sweet Patootie Arts, prior to joining us here at Tower Hamlets. So, hello Tony. Would you like to elaborate and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Genova. For more than 20 years now, I've been doing projects that bring art and stories of diverse experiences to life for multicultural collaborators and audiences to participate in, learn from and engage with. My passion is telling stories that build better understanding of people and events we think we know. My target audiences for this are the arts, learning, heritage, community development and well-being sectors. I've had a lifelong passion for discovering and celebrating my Black heritage. My ma is from Barbados and Papa T is from Grenada. And the strong inspirations for my work have always been diversity, inclusion, Black experience and culture. So for me, the Communities of Liberation project ticks both of these boxes, the personal and the professional. It's fantastic to be working with you and the team at Tower Hamlets Archives, along with the project's awesome steering group. To find out more about how our steering group have been supporting this project, check out the show notes.
So today's historical object is a parish record, the Day Book of Baptisms. And Tony, you were first made aware of this historical record when applying for the Research and Engagement Lead role. But it's unique to us in so many ways, from the names that it holds, and it is one of the few baptism records we have here. It's special because it recorded the names at the church font during each baptism, although the official sets of baptism records are held at the London Metropolitan Archives, who have explored the presence of people of colour in London through their own project and exhibition, Switching the Lens. More information can be found in the show notes. So, Tony, for our audiences, could you describe what this record looks like? Is there anything particularly interesting about its appearance?
Well, the Day Book of Baptisms is a volume of squarish pages of thick, old, pale yellowish parchment paper. Each page about 16 or 17 centimetres wide by about 20 centimetres high. I didn't count the number of pages in the book, but I'd guess there's around 80 to 100. To preserve these old pages, they're bound in a toffee-coloured modern hardback cover with the name and catalogue number of the contents on the spine. St George in the East, Baptisms Day Book, 1786 to 90.
Thank you, Tony, for that detailed description. And how were you actually made aware of this item in the collection?
By coincidence, I was asked to do a presentation about these pages in my interview for this job with you. I'd seen baptism pages from 200 and 300 years ago in my work before, and also, as you do, when you're watching family history programs like Who Do You Think You Are? But this was the first time I'd seen any of the baptism sources in Tower Hamlets Archives.
So why do you say this was by coincidence?
It's a great example of the personal and professional I mentioned. To start with, I had to translate the Old English text from the 1780s. And as I'm translating, bam, I find William Ford, a black man from Barbados, baptised in January 1787. My Barbados grandma's family name is Ford. They have a connection to the only plantation that the Ford family owned in Barbados in the 1700s. The same plantation that William Ford probably worked on, and the reason why he had that name.
Wow, that's amazing, to potentially find your ancestor and have that personal connection to a 300-year-old record is what it was meant to be then, you know? So were there any other similar names or names of people from the Americas found in this book?
Along with William Ford from Barbados, I found entries for other black people baptised in that parish church. Arthur Forrest from Kingston, Jamaica, a black man. Thomas Warren, a black man from Jamaica. John Raven, a black man from Grenada. And the black people registered in the Day Book of Baptisms didn't only arrive in the East End from Caribbean colonies, they also arrived via the United States too. Mark Kingston from Charleston, South Carolina. James Williams, a black man from Georgia.
Wow, amazing. And just in that 4-year period as well, I decided to ask our archives manager, Richard Wiltshire, some questions about how this particular item came to be in our collections and its significance for the project. Hello, Richard. Can you tell me a little bit about your role and introduce yourself for our listeners?
Hello there. Hi, my name is Richard Wiltshire. I am Archives Manager here at Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives.
Thank you very much. And today we're talking about a collection known as the Day Book of Baptisms, which is a parish record. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit about, that kind of record and the collection?
Yeah, no, certainly. These Day Book of Baptisms were kept by a parish of St George in the East, which is in the Stepney area in Tower Hamlets. And what's really interesting is that here we have the day books, and these date from 1729 right through to 1838. And unusually, we have those day books as part of the local authority parish archives that we have. They were inherited by the current council, London Borough of Tower Hamlets, because, little do we know, but the parishes were our predecessors. So it's really interesting how they've made it their way through to us by being a predecessor of a very, very active council today running the East End.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear about how records are passed down in that way and how they're transferred through different administrations as well. So my next question for you is a little bit about the record itself. So how was it kind of discovered amongst such a big collection of stuff that's been acquired over time? Like, how do you find such a record as this and the information that's inside it as well?
Yeah. Well, I think what's great is that our sister archive, the London Metropolitan Archives, which holds the parish records of St George in the East, from the incumbent or vicar side of things, they actually hold the finalised parish register. And one thing that they did was have a project around Black and Asian Londoners to identify entries in parish registers. So what was fascinating for us is to see and compare what we have in the daybook entries that relate to people of colour. So the interesting thing here is that we actually looked at some of our old lists to this collection that we have and found that some of that identification and research had been done by our predecessors. And so we have updated our catalogue with the additional information, and you'll find that under L/SGE/B/1/11. And that's particularly for this one day book. but there are many more to discover as well.
So are there many more records such as this in the Tower Hamlets Archive and Library collection, or is this kind of a unique record?
This is very much a unique record. Day books are kind of like a rough book. They're a rough book where the clerk to the parish would make the entry of the individual soon after their baptism, but then the final was worked up into the parish register. And for that reason, often day books don't survive because they're a rough copy. So this is very unique in terms of in our collections. They do exist elsewhere in parish archives, but for us, it's very much unique, and it's really great that we have this evidence locally to benefit the local community, as well as people discovering these resources on online resources such as ancestry.co.uk, where you can explore those final parish registers, those written up copies.
So from the research and the exhibition that's done by the London Metropolitan Archives, that kind of really helped staff here like highlight similarities within our own collection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from the 2000s, the late 90s, 2000s, there was a real sea change in how archive services like us and other local authorities make the collections relevant to all populations, all communities, and realizing that you may not have archives from those communities yet, but there is so much about them in resources, but often they're hidden. And what we mean by hidden is that it's very difficult to describe every single entry in a book, in a minute book, in a report. And so at that time, they're almost hidden. So bringing them out was very important. And we see this as a legacy. A lot of the projects that happen now are building on those earlier projects and actually getting them out there to the wider public.
Amazing. And the names that feature in the Daybook of Baptisms that reference people from of African heritage or from the Caribbean and the Americas, there's more extensive lists in the London Metropolitan Archives collection that can also be found online, right? So,
you can check them online. I'll just read out some of the places, actually. It's good that you've sort of sorted out. So in terms of some of the countries, there are people being baptized who came from Barbados in the 1780s, late 1780s, Jamaica, Grenada, South Carolina, obviously now in the USA, Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, and also Bermuda. So you can see how multicultural society has always been.
And all these people were baptised at St George in the East, just outside of Stepney. So, they're not like, these are not names of people that weren't like very present at this period of time, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just a question actually about who's written up this list, and this can be found on the catalogue. So if you search our catalogue on our website, then you can find the list of these names in the entry. So who actually first wrote this list? Do you know, or do you have any indication to who? Well,
we've had some really good staff here. I think we can never take the credit, our staff now, for everything. Our predecessors, local history librarians, previous archivists, other members of staff have created lists to various collections that have come to us. And often it's been a case of, in the more recent period of history, is getting those descriptions online. So often a lot of those description work, hard work, has already been done, and a lot of it is just getting the descriptions and actually also remembering that we have these resources and pinpointing them in our guides, so that if someone's interested in a particular area, say the Black community, that we can go, here's our guide, and then there'll be an entry for these day books, for example. So because it could be maybe a bit bamboozly for someone to initially kind of know where to navigate to. So guides really do help. It helps staff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's really highlights the importance of cataloguing, of indexing, the extraordinary work that and tasks that our volunteers help with as well, and also the work that's been happening around other projects that various genealogical groups do, but also Communities of Liberation, the project which hopefully will increase this kind of awareness of these type of sources.
Yeah, and hopefully it kind of has a kind of a model that, just like switching the lens, kind of highlighted all those stories. It kind of made a model for other places like us to look at our own collections. So hopefully Communities of Liberation can do a very similar thing for other institutions and organisations to look at their own collections in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's right. The Switching the Lens is the project from the London Metropolitan Archives around Black and Asian Londoners, about looking back at the previous projects and actually getting that data out there. The other thing I want to highlight is also the work that Tower Hamlets African Caribbean Mental Health Organisation has done with Harry Cumberbatch and other individuals through about highlighting the awareness of Black community in the borough way before the Windrush period, way into the 18th century and before. So and all the work that they've done, we have the archives here of the group's work as well. So
yes, that's an amazing collection to highlight, and that's definitely a topic for another podcast episode.
I think so.
To look into their amazing work and contributions to the archive and to African history. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much, Richard. Yes, and all the amazing insights into the record and the collections.
Thank you.
Thank you. I spoke to another one of my colleagues, Archivist Annette Mackin.
My name is Annette Mackin. I am the Heritage Officer Archives. I'm working on the collections we already have, such as cataloguing them, accessioning them, which is a process of bringing them into our collections, and repackaging. That means putting them into archive standard boxes and folders to make sure they're looked after. Also, one of my main roles is in digital collections as well, so that's getting material deposited from the council departments and also our external users and depositors to make sure that we are getting like the broad breadth of all collections, because as we know, most things now are created digitally, so we have to be able to get to a place where we can take them in and look after them in the same way we do for our paper collection.
Thank you. Yes, very busy, a lot going on. Yeah, it's great, and always acquiring new material as well. So today we're talking about a specific record. So it's the Day Book of Baptism. Yeah. So I've spoken to Richard a little bit about the record itself and the collection it is in within parish records, and then within local government records as well.
Yeah.
And how it's been kind of passed down through administration. So my questions for you actually is about kind of the discovery of the collection. Was that through the database? Was that through like an actual physical list? How was that?
So yeah, so it's really interesting actually, and it's it's a small part of what I do. But so people might know that we have an online catalogue which is searchable via our website, and that contains a lot of the material that we have. So the Day Book of Baptism is on there, along with other St George in the East parish records. So you can search our catalogue, and that's how you request material in our reading room. But over the years, there's been a priority to get stuff on the catalogue so people can just see what we have and request it. But what might have been missed over the years is some of the finer detail in the list. So what we have here are these sort of blue binds, folders, like literally like, I don't know what you call them, like lever arch files kind of thing. So, and they were like the pre-catalogue before, so they were done in the 80s. So when we got the first archivist in 1986, I think, their job was to type up using a typewriter, like these lists of accessions. So an accession is when something comes into the archive, it gets given a unique number and a description of what it was. And when these accession lists were typed up, that Day Book of Baptism, they saw that it had these names in it and the locations of where these people were from, and they included it in the accession. But for some reason, when we went online, so when the catalogue went from these folders onto the online catalogue, that was just missed. And so my job is to go through these folders and just to enhance the descriptions to make sure that actually people are aware of what's in them, and especially something like this when it's so important. Otherwise, people would have, like a needle in a haystack. How would you possibly know, unless you knew what you were looking for, that this was included in them? So that's also part of one of my roles, is to kind of enhance catalogue descriptions and to pull out relevant and interesting facts that people might be interested in for their research.
Did you find that specific list in the folder because of some of the work that's been done uncovering these stories in other places? I was talking to Richard about switching the lens and what's been happening at London Metropolitan Archives. Did that kind of influence you to go to a specific folder, or was it just by chance?
It was purely by chance. It wasn't, I'd love to say actually we were going to go for buying this, but it was like literally, I go through each page. I'm going through them in order of their accession number. So we just turn the page. We're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. How did this not, it just got missed, I guess, because the priority was just to get the higher level descriptions on the catalogue, because it's important for people to know we have these day books and the year range and all that kind of stuff. So it was important. That was a priority about 20 odd years ago, and we got HARM, our catalogue system. So now, and it's not just here, but other archives, they'll be going through their older records and just seeing how they can just develop on the kind of rudimentary descriptions that might be there.
Amazing. How funny that kind of popped up at the same time as obviously the Communities Liberation Project was on the horizon, and obviously with switching the lens, that kind of list just came.
It was so is it serendipitous? It just yeah, you're right. Like it was all this, Community Liberation was already in the work.
Yeah.
And then it just pops out like it was waiting to be found.
Meant to be, exactly. And it's great as well. I think it's really interesting that in the 1980s that somebody thought to still write up those names, thought that it was really important to highlight those entries that they had found in a daybook back then. And
what's interesting and what isn't captured in those folders is how they found those entries, because as you know, the daybook of baptism's got loads of names in it, and how did they? So was it somebody who was in the reading room and went, oh, did you know actually? So was there somebody doing research in the 80s into Black Londoners and was like, I don't know if you know this, but this is really interesting. And it was almost like a discovery of this that hadn't been looked at for maybe many years. And so they were like, actually, that's a really good point. We're going to include this in our listing. But
it's a hidden story in itself, isn't it? Why the list was written up in the first place and how that came about. So
yeah,
who knows if there's even more records with such kind of information in,
find more little notes like that where somebody's pulled, the archivist at the time, or somebody's informed them that actually this is it's a task to do, because while it's just kind of sometimes cleaning up or including little bits and pieces like, expanding on dates, actually you do find these little really interesting nuggets of information, which...
well done for finding it. It was amazing to add it to the database, the CARM entry, so people can find it,
Well, it's been really nice to see it getting used now, because I think a lot of those old parish records they can be a bit intimidating for a lot of people. The handwriting's quite difficult. There's a lot of, people go, well, what is it? And it's, I think it can be overwhelming just because it takes time to go through. So it's been really nice to see people come into the reading room to actually use that page and to kind of then go on and to see it being used in the current project as well. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. And this is what we want. We want to highlight certain collections and, hopefully people can come and have a look at the Daybook of Baptisms. It's available during our opening hours in the reading room. Anyone, as long as you sign up, register as a user, can come and access the collections, and it's a really special record and unique in the kind of information that it holds.
Yeah.
Along with lots of other great, unique pieces in our collection as well.
And I think it's really because Richard might have spoke about this as well, but the parish records, so the stuff we hold here is the local authority side of the parish, so it's civic function almost, and the religious side of it is gone to the London Metropolitan Archives, so those kind of, the marriage registers and death burial registers, that kind of thing. So it's really amazing that the day book has survived and was given to us. And hopefully it will open up like the wider St George in the East kind of that whole series, really. So everything to do with this, all of the vestry minutes and so on. So people might think, oh, okay, well, if these people living at this date and at this address, then I'm going to go and look in the vestry minutes for this and see if there's any other mentions of other people in the area or any other things. So it's kind of like a jumping off point as well, as you say, for all the other potential mentions that might be there that we might not yet have called out because we don't know that they're in there because, but so if anyone does find anything, then we would love to know so we can enhance our our description.
Exactly. And obviously researchers as well can contribute to what we are not really aware of in our own collection. So that's really amazing.
Because it's amazing. Obviously, it's amazing to work here. We've got such cool collections, but we don't unfortunately have the time to go and do the research. We'd love to sit and look over all these minutes and do that, but we have to our focus is on making them available for people to do that. So researchers play a big, all our users that come in play a big role in pointing things out to us, and it's really nice when people just to chat to us about what they're researching, and we love to hear about it, and please do let us know.
Thank you so much, Annette. That was really insightful as well, just to see background workings of acquiring, accessioning, organising, uploading to the database. So it's very, 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 very informative. So thank you so much. I catch up with Tony again to talk a little bit more about how the Communities of Liberation project is developing. So how does this particular item contribute to the project that you're leading on?
It's exciting to find evidence to confirm black presence in the borough 200 years before our Windrush generation. But finding black people recorded in the daybook also gets you thinking about their lives and experiences. For example, how and why did black people arrive from the Caribbean? Were they free in the Caribbean and travelled here with their own money? Were they brought here by slave owners who then set them free? Did they escape from their enslavers? And why were they getting baptised? Was it to protect their freedom, so they wouldn't or couldn't be enslaved again? Was it because they were poor and needed assistance, so they got baptised to have help from the parish, as the system was at that time? Those black men from the United States, for instance, were they former enslaved Africans who had fought for Britain in the American War of Independence? After the war, they'd been given passage on a ship to Britain and then left to fend for themselves, but ended up destitute in London. With so much focus on the 75th anniversary of the Empire Windrush arriving, finding black people from the Caribbean in an East London baptism record from 300 years ago, that's such a powerful way for the diverse interest groups this project is working with to discover or be reminded that black people have been in this country since centuries before the Windrush generation.
Thank you so much, Tony, and it sounds so exciting. And uncovering these stories and names of those people of African heritage in the records that go back hundreds of years really does turn the history books on their heads. And I'm sure many listeners to this podcast and those that have heard of Communities of Liberation are itching to find out more. So please do join the mailing list. Check out our website to find out how you can get involved, or even if this has sparked some research, or if you want to access any of our unique historical material, please see the show notes. Thank you so much, Tony. This has been East End History in an Object, and look out for the next episode.